Look, I talk a lot about media consolidation on the national level, but it turns out it's actually a huge problem when it comes to local media as well. In fact, there's one specific media company that a lot of progressives and media activists are worried about, and it's Sinclair Broadcasting. Sinclair Broadcasting is now being talked about as a rival to Fox News. Now, Politico had a great report back in December that actually highlighted why why people are so worried about them. And it has a lot to do with their reach. Now, one example they gave is the Trump interviews, right? Now, according to Politico, Sinclair would broadcast their Trump interviews across the country without commentary. And Kushner, and this is who they talked to. They talked to Jared Kushner. And he highlighted that Sinclair in states like Ohio reached a much wider audience, around 250,000 viewers, that networks like CNN, which reached somewhere around 30,000 viewers. Now, look, I don't have a problem with reach, but I do have a bit of a problem with media consolidation and, more importantly, propaganda. Now, journalist David Zurwick, who has covered local television for roughly 30 years, recently told CNN in a segment that Sinclair comes as close to classic propaganda as I think I've seen in 30 years of covering local television on national television. They're outrageous. Now, that's a pretty big charge, saying that Sinclair media, oh man, it's nothing but it's propaganda. And in fact, this is incredibly rank propaganda. And this is coming from somebody who had watched, who studied television, covered local television for 3 decades. So this is a guy who should know what he's talking about. And this guy is pointing out Sinclair as being somebody who's as close to propaganda as they can get, or that he's ever seen. Well, that would seem to suggest that there's a problem with Sinclair. Now, he says that whatever the White House says, President Trump believes there is voter fraud, and he sets up this commission to get data from the states, and the states rightfully push back because it's very intrusive data. Boris Epstein's piece on it ends with, the states should cooperate with President Trump. And that's the kind of stuff that is apparently being shown on Sinclair channels. Well, that's very interesting. Now, look, they have a bias, and I think having a bias is fine. I have a bias. All right. They like Trump. I don't like Trump. I don't really care about their message so much. I think that that's free speech, but how they're doing it is very problematic, and they're using propaganda-like tactics as well as media consolidation in order to get out that message, and I seem to have a problem with that. Now, according to Common Dreams, the Sinclair Broadcasting Group, as you could probably tell, has close ties to the Trump administration, but the problem is that they're forcing local stations to air pro-Trump, pro-government segments. Now, what does that sound like to you? It sounds like state TV. Now, this company is also being helped by the Trump FCC, which recently rolled back a key Obama administration regulation that prevented stations that are large like Sinclair from further expansion. Now, with that rule gone, Sinclair has purchased more than 42 more local stations from Tribune Media Company, they now extend their reach to 72% of American households. So that is very, very large for one company. 72%. So that's a huge reach. But wait, they actually want to increase that reach even further through more acquisitions. But what makes it worse is that Sinclair, once they take over your station, they start dictating what direction it's going to go. And the direction that they choose is overwhelmingly to the right. Sinclair and its digital news subsidiary, Circa, not only produce and send packages to their stations, they even write scripts that local anchors use to introduce their pieces. So they get a piece on, like, for example, the Iran deal, and they said, okay, this is how you want to frame it, that the Iran deal is terrible and we should rip it up. That's how the newscaster is going to present it. Again, that's a disaster, because what you're getting is you're not getting all the facts, right? You're getting a right-wing frame from the beginning. And of course, that framing is going to set up the entire segment to get the desired outlook, or to get the desired, I can't think of the word, the desired reaction, okay, from their audience, which is the Iran deal sucks, despite the facts on it, okay? And even if those facts are, if they have misleading pieces posing as fact. So, now, furthermore, they have these things called must-runs, right? Now, must-runs are, I mean, it's in the title, okay? You have to run it. And they're sent to every day to all local stations owned by Sinclair Broadcasting. And again, these are video reports that are centrally produced by the company. They're sent out, and they're said, you must run this piece. So, and the rules are that station managers around the country have to work them into the broadcasts over a period of 24 to 48 hours. These videos, the problem with those is that they often lack context or present any opposing viewpoints. In fact, the Portland Press Herald had a great report on what these broadcasts actually look like from a regular TV viewer. Now, they talked to somebody named Mark McCutcheon of South Portland. Now, he was watching WGME, it was a station now owned by Sinclair Broadcasting, and he was watching the newscast, as he had for a long time, and something came on that actually shocked him. He said in the midst of local news, a taped commentary from President Trump's former special assistant, Boris Epstein, appeared on the screen, trumpeting the administration's position with what he thought selective use and abuse of facts. McCutcheon, a small business owner and political independent, describes the experience as surreal, extremely jarring, and so out of place with the friendly local broadcast from news people I've come to trust over the years. There was no rebuttal, no context, no alternative point of view, which is a situation that he found concerning. WGME TV, Channel 13, and WPFO TV, Channel 23, each carry segments 9 times a week on orders from their owner, the Maryland-based Sinclair Broadcasting Group, the nation's largest owner of local television stations, and an aggressive, unabashed disseminator of conservative commentary supporting the Trump wing of the Republican Party. Now, Craig Aaron, president and CEO of Free Press, a Washington-based group that opposes media consolidation, said, quote, "It's unheard of to have a company pushing one specific agenda, reaching so many people, and doing it in a way designed to evade local input." He continues, "The idea of having local stations offer an array of viewpoints is great, but what we get with Sinclair is one set of political leanings being broadcast everywhere." Now, look, some right-wingers will be like, oh my God, CNN, MSNBC. CNN and MSNBC have all hired right-wingers from the Trump administration to come in and offer their side of the view. Now, I think that it's actually terrible because most of what they say is actually bullshit, but they are offering a different point of view. But the segments here on Sinclair offer no rebuttal, no context, and no opposing view. That's propaganda. You're not getting the other side. So, and look, that's the kind of stuff that's being slipped into the 5 o'clock news, okay, into these news stations. And again, that is very problematic, not just for me from a progressive or a liberal perspective, but also from a factual perspective, because you're not getting the whole story when you prevent it from simply one point of view. And look, again, speaking of CNN, MSNBC, this is the kind of stuff that some conservatives accuse liberals of doing. Oh, all you're doing is indoctrinating people with CNN's fake news. Now, look, I've talked about bias in the media, and I think there is a bias in, CNN. I know CNN has a bias. I know MSNBC has a bias. I have a bias. But as far as the bias of, for example, most what they would call liberal media, I think it has not a liberal bias, not even a conservative bias. I actually think it has an establishment bias. For example, CNN protects the status quo. That's what they're about. MSNBC is also very pro-establishment, and Fox News we know is a media arm of the Republican Party. Now, Sinclair, they take it much further than Fox News. They actually inject their opinion in must-runs into local straight news broadcasts. not because the anchors are conservative or necessarily agree. And it's fine if you have a conservative anchor saying, hey, this is my viewpoint. The problem is that when they present that viewpoint as actual fact. And they're only doing this because a lot of their bosses tell them to do so, or else they're going to get fired. Okay? And that is, of course, deeply disturbing. Now, it's one thing to have an opinion, but it's quite another to hand out talking points and must-run ads with a deeply one-sided framing. Now, could you imagine if George Soros ran a station like that? That said, okay, all you have to, like, so you're going to run a segment, you're going to run a must-run saying socialism is awesome. Now, what's going to happen? People are going to freak out. Why don't we just get back to, I don't know, talking about the news? I wouldn't recommend a station like Sinclair, and I also wouldn't recommend the fictional Soros station, okay? What I would actually recommend is that we stick to straight news and actual facts. Now, facts do tend to have a liberal bias. I'm not going to say that they don't. And that the current Republican Party keeps making shit up. They make things up. They make up alternative facts, and they have this alternative fact-free universe. And we've talked about that. In fact, we have a conservative commentator, Charlie Sykes, who also says, we spent the last 30 years building this fact-free universe that didn't exist before. Because back in the olden days, conservatives actually did agree on facts. They just differed on the way that they want to solve those issues. Now, today, you've got a party that doesn't believe that climate change has actually happened, despite massive amounts of evidence. They believe in trickle-down theory, which doesn't work. Look at Kansas. Look at all the places that it's been tried. And they believe in some mythical healthcare system that's actually never been tried. So patient-centered, freedom healthcare. Where the rest of the world, the rest of the developed world, is using a single-payer system that actually works. So this is that alternative universe. We can't even agree on the facts anymore. Even if we have different ways of approaching solving those issues that America faces, and that the world faces. You can't even agree on the facts. How can you have a conversation with the other side if you don't agree that the sky is blue? And some of the people will be calling it, no, liberal conspiracy, the sky is actually green. It's ridiculous. So that's the problem here. The problem is that we have a conservative media that is so off the rails. And now, instead of actually monitoring themselves and agreeing on facts, they're buying up more stations and they're pushing propaganda. And that, again, is a huge, huge problem. And look, one of the reasons, or one of the ways that I think that we should actually solve this problem is with less media consolidation. We need to break up the big media giants, and that includes what you would consider liberal media. We also need to remove the profit motive from news broadcasts. This shouldn't be a business. This shouldn't be a profit motive. Because, again, stations that have a profit motive, and, again, I criticize MSNBC and CNN all the time for this, is that if you have a profit motive to not report on certain things, for example, Standing Rock or, fracking disasters, well, then you're not going to report on that because your parent company happens to be tied in those businesses, and they will lose business. So that's, again, one of the major problems here, and we need to eliminate that profit motive. We need to decorporatize the media and turn it into what it's supposed to be, nonprofit. Now, that doesn't mean giving media over to the government, because the government can have its own bias as well, pushing pro-government, pro-establishment policy. What news needs to be is that it needs to be unbiased, and it needs to be non-corporate funded. It needs to be truly independent, because that's the only way the people are actually going to get actual facts and to have actual real conversations about how to solve real problems. And Sinclair is not doing that, and that's why I believe that they're a big, big problem. They keep continuing to buy up local media, and they're setting up this conservative agenda, and they're blocking out dissenting opinions. And I think that is deeply dangerous for the discourse in this country, and, of course, for the institution of the free press. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.